there is a feeling of elitism sometimes when it comes to cooking.
Yes,
Yeah.
exceptionally so. And we've come to a point where we've really just kind of scared people away from cooking. I don't think food's art. Art has the room for it to be subjective. Art can be different to everyone, right? Whereas food cannot. Food's a craft. Food is very objective. It must taste good or it doesn't taste good. You can have an opinion about what we do, but I don't have to react to it. I don't have to put validity to what you've just said.
We've got another episode now, and this time my guest is a person who has taste, you could say. Almost literally, actually very literally. He is Darren Teoh, the founder of Dewakan. Thank you for joining us, Darren.
Thanks for having me.
Now, there is so much to ask because Dewakan is the only Malaysian restaurant with 2 Michelin stars
At the moment, yeah.
at the moment, and also a green Michelin star.
Also, yes.
Right. We're going to get more deeper into that in a moment. But for now, tell us how this journey of food of yours began. Where does this passion for food and cooking come from?
I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack from just that conversation alone. Anybody who's hungry would develop a passion for food, right? Because if you're hungry, you just want to eat something. I think for me, it really was the fact that the academic environment that I grew up in wasn't as conducive for the things that I was interested in.
Could you give us more details on that?
Yeah. I was pretty rubbish at school. That's what I'm trying to say, in the most polite way.
You don't have to be that polite. It's all good.
I grew up very good with my hands, and I like doing things that were visceral. But at the same time, I was also quite a studious person for things that I enjoyed.
Right. So
I read a lot. And you take those experiences from what you read and you put that into practicality. Whereas in school you don't get a lot of that. So picking up cooking was a very intuitive way for me to express my life experiences, right? And put that out into something. So I was raised in a home that cooked nearly every meal. And food was an important part of celebration. It was an important part of familial tie, community. So it became very natural to me to do that.
Were you involved in it from very early on? Did you choose to be involved in the food preparation, or was it not an option in many Asian families? It is not an option sometimes. You're forced to be a part of the process.
I don't think it's so much as forced as it's an assumed obligation, I think. In the family that I grew up in, on my mom's side, was very matriarchal. So my grandmother, being the matriarch, would, orchestrate these sort of like event dinners and things like that in our very small house in PJ. And so everybody then played a part, right? And to keep you from getting up to mischief, you grate the coconuts, or you do something useful like pound the spice or something like that.
Do you enjoy it even then? Was there joy in it?
I mean, I think I don't think you'd find the same sort of joy, lah. I mean, not the same joy that you're talking about, at least.
Right.
I mean, you're a kid. Anything becomes an adventure. So it didn't come to the end of having to cook something or to produce something. It was just this is what my grandmother asked me to do, and looked like a lot of fun, so I just do that. Yeah.
What was that journey like from little Darren, who is now the man who is the founder of Dewakan? What was that journey like?
That's a couple of decades to summarize in a couple of sentences.
Tell us about the academic steps, or not the academic steps so much, but the work steps. Like, how many previous restaurants were there before leading up to this? Yeah.
After high school, I did a degree program in hospitality and catering, at which time, It was based in city center, so it was actually on Sultan Ismail. That's where the college used to be.
Okay.
The building doesn't exist anymore. It used to be right next to the old Hilton. It was called the Complex Antarabangsa.
Okay.
And from there, because it was the epicenter of the city, there were a lot of opportunities to go and work part time. So I spent a lot of time doing things like banqueting in the Hilton or at the EQ, at the Equatorial at the time. Used to work for a lecturer of mine who used to have also a wine bar up at Jalan Mesui. So I do that. So there was, during the three and a half years of study, it was dotted with a lot of part-time work. Just getting to know the industry, and it was also because it was new and fun, and it was exhilarating. It was a subculture, and at the time, cooking was a subculture. It's not as glorified as it is the same way it is now. Most times, people hardly see the person who's cooking your food,
especially so in Malaysia at that point, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think I could speak for like the rest of the world, but at that time, I felt, it's very different. I don't know if you've read Anthony Bourdain's book. I think either Kitchen Confidential or Cook's Tour, one of them. And he often refers to, when he started out, he often refers to the kitchens being very akin to a pirate ship.
Right.
It's like you get like the rejects of society, the vagabonds, and guys who got out of prison, can't find a job. It was very similar here, not as extreme, but like very similar as well. It's not exactly as prim and proper as you'd see most kitchens are nowadays. So
right.
Back in the day, it was a little bit rougher, a little bit tougher.
Right. But that was your experience.
That was
actually
my experience.
What you saw.
It was what I enjoyed, actually, because it was a subculture of. I felt it was very much a renegade, sort of identity. Yeah,
it's interesting that you say that, because there is a feeling of elitism sometimes when it comes to cooking.
Oh yeah. What, like now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exceptionally so. And I feel like I feel in the past 20 years or so, especially with the way food media has just exalted the position of the person who leads a kitchen or leads a restaurant. We've come to a point where we've really just kind of scared people away from cooking. Because there's this idea or this ideology that that in order to cook a certain way or to cook certain dishes, it has to be of a certain standard. You see that through programs that do cooking competitions or who feature very acclaimed chefs cooking, and I think it intimidates people as more than it encourages people.
Yeah.
And in the way that the production has gone over the past 25 years. So I think that has produced sort of like this idea that cooking is very distant,
And you feel it should not be that way. How do you feel about it?
Well, everybody should be able to cook. Everybody should be able to fry an egg, make rice, do a sambal or something. Everybody should be able to do that. I mean, it's inherent for us to eat, right?
But food gets elevated depending on occasions, depending on who's cooking.
No, that's you.
Okay,
that's us.
Oh, that's our
us.
feeling. Okay.
Yeah, that's us projecting this this utopian idea of what the food should be. Right? Because I don't think it has the experience of eating is very, very loosely connected to what you feel on your palate. A lot of it's memory.
Okay.
A lot of it is how you're feeling at the time. And how you're feeling at the time is not necessarily reflected in what you put in your mouth. Right? It's going to be the occasion, the moment that you spend speaking with someone that you enjoy being with. You you create a memory, how you feel. Your first date would, you could plan it in such a way that you go to like a fancy restaurant or an acclaimed restaurant, or you could go and just do it at the side of the road and have like, claypot chicken rice and still have a good time, right?
Food isn't just food.
Food is a medium. It's a medium for creating a memory. But it's rarely the memory in itself. Right? Because I think there are many moments in your life where you thought like, okay, look, I'm going to go for like, this fancy restaurant and I'm going to eat here and da-da-da-da-da. And then, you enjoy the company more than you enjoy the meal. And you don't remember, you might remember some parts of the meal.
Right.
But that's not the entirety of the memory that you're taking.
Right. That's definitely an interesting way to think about food. Like, yeah.
I think it is because if you look at a lot of restaurants these days, in the sort of like the restaurants that seem to be like at the forefront of, I don't want
what
to use
is
the word.
seen to be
What is seen to be popular, what is seen to be, and you see one of the things that they put a lot of emphasis on is this word, and everybody's using it now, but experiential, right? Where they're looking at the package of the restaurant and food, although an important part, it's not the most important part, and there are a lot of other things to it. And you'd see right here in the city, you have restaurants that are doing little projector things, and they're doing they're doing it up in the elevated in the sky or something like this, or doing it when you're blind. I mean, like, not when you're blind, but like in pitch darkness. So there are a lot of things that people are putting into play to create this sort of like perfect storm,
right,
for you to have a long-lasting memory of the experience. And food is only like a component out of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How does it feel now when you realize what you've been through to get to this point?
Ooh, that's another layered question. Yeah, interestingly enough, we're doing a little bit more interviews this year simply because we have reached our decade. So we opened in 2015, March the 2nd, I think, and then this March we celebrated our 10 years. And interestingly enough, it's interesting that you brought up that question, because I've been contemplating that for the past year prior to this, expecting it to be a bit more momentous, I suppose. But I think, I guess the best way that I could summarize how I feel is that I don't think we're done yet. I think there's still a lot of things that we have yet to contribute to the industry, to ourselves, to our stakeholders, to the people who supply to us. I think there's just a lot more for us to do. We've done a lot. I think we have done a lot. We're very proud of it.
Is the way you feel impacted at all by, or how much is it impacted by the Michelin stars that you have also achieved, on top of all the other recognition that you've gotten? It's 2 Michelin stars and the Green Michelin star.
That's a tricky one, because for many anybody who's in an industry knows that there's going to be some sort of apex, especially when it comes to like awards and accolades and things like this. And of course, it reflects a life work, or it reflects the appreciation that comes with having done something,
and having done it well in the eyes of the industry.
But I think often we forget that these accolades are meant to reflect your work, and so your work with or without the accolade will still continue, right? And I think there's a big differentiation or discernment to make there. People tend to think that the award kind of defines who you are. Like whether you've got an Oscar or if you've got like the Ballon d'Or, and it defines who you are. But actually, it's the opposite, right? the award is defined by the work that you do.
Right.
And it's at no fault of the award themselves, right? Because that's exactly what they've set out to do.
Right.
It's just how people kind of reflect on and interpret this moment that you're experiencing. And so it feels to me that that if we are constant with our approach and the way that we do things and the values that we hold that are important to us, then we will continuously be, having an enriched life, or at least an enriched career.
It feels like, based on what you're saying, the award is appreciated, but it doesn't change you
Yeah.
and the work that you do.
You're absolutely right. It was a posture that I had to assume after receiving it, right? Like it's after receiving it, I said, oh, you know what, I should adjust my posture to recognize that although it has been great and it is great, I cannot allow it to define how we do things in the future.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because to know that you were already doing good work without this recognition
Yeah.
is recognition in its own right, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's great to receive it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want to be like waylaid by it and like,
Yeah.
feel like, okay, like, what do you think like this award wants us to do? Is this how we're going to achieve this award? And then you kind of design whatever that you're doing now, the processes that you've already worked up until now, and then kind of design it so that you're in the running for more awards, right?
And to feel that kind of pressure is not something that you're sure you want to
It's
lean
not
into.
that kind of pressure.
Okay.
Like I would rather have the pressure of doing things well,
Right.
and doing things that hold value to us. That's the kind of pressure I'm okay with. But like doing the work for the sake of an accolade,
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
Because the accolade doesn't want you to do that as well.
Yeah, because
The
you got it. Because the reason you got the accolade was for doing the work you do. If then you steer your work to win more accolades, then you're steering away from what you were originally
exactly.
doing.
So that was the stance, the posture that I had to sort of like in my mind had to change. I'm not sure if everybody else felt the same. It was just how I felt.
Yeah.
And that was
Makes sense.
how I felt about it.
Right, interesting. How did you go about forming the team that you have now at the restaurant? Because one thing we hear a lot from when it comes to running a restaurant is the difficulty in forming a team that runs.
I think it's still a challenge. I think every industry has this sort of like hurdle of trying to hire the right talent. Like, do you hire the right talent or do you grow the right talent? Right? They're both difficult questions. Because if you hire the right talent, given time, that talent might leave you or something like this. And if you grow the right talent, all the investment that you've made, then you might not necessarily reap. So I think that's tricky. I mean, I think we realize that what we do at the restaurant is for the moment and where we are right now, this is what needs to be made sufficient. I think one of the things that we have been fortunate enough to learn is to invest in the people regardless of what they will give back to you. And I think investing in people means that you then develop relationships, and these relationships then pour back into you. Sometimes, I think what we hope to achieve at the end of the day is to kind of like develop champions for the restaurant. People who, even after being with us for a brief time of like a year or two, you leave and then they go to other places and they still speak well of the restaurant.
Right.
We've not always been successful with that, I'll be very honest. But it has been a very key part of how we view our human talent. The other thing is that we are very clear about what we value as a restaurant and as an organization.
Right.
And because of that, it then attracts people who have similar values,
Right.
similar ideas or similar identity, and they get attracted to us, and then often they stay.
So it all depends on a little bit of luck as well. Once you've brought the person in,
I don't think it's
all
luck.
moving parts. Okay.
It's more the scale of probabilities, right?
Okay.
So like if you go through 10 and you get 1, then it's great.
Right.
Like or if,
There's a ratio somewhere in there.
so you'd have to go through like 300 for you to get like a good team. But we've been very, very fortunate. We've always had at every point the right kind of person who stepped through the doors, and very blessed that they have given everything they had at the time, in whatever brief period that they were with us, or whatever period that they were with us. They've always given the most of everything,
Right.
and that's counted a lot.
And speaking of the restaurant, the name itself is very unique. It's a combination of God and food. How would you describe the philosophy of the food? Philosophy is such a big word, but
Yeah.
how would you describe your food? How would you describe your food?
I think that's difficult. We've been trying to describe our food and put that into a sentence for a long time.
Is it constantly changing? Is that
It is. I think it is. And I think if you would look at what we were offering when we first opened our doors and what we're offering now is, worlds apart. However, I do think that it has reflected the name of the restaurant. It also has reflected our commitment to the evolution of the cuisine. The name of the restaurant reflects the bounty that this land's been blessed with, right? Like, you look at it everywhere. You just throw a seed somewhere. You throw a rambutan seed on the ground. Come back in about 2 months, you see there's a sprout.
Yeah.
Right. It's really interesting because there are not many places around the world where this could happen, and that was where the initial sort of like concept or the idea came from. But then the evolution kicked in when we started exploring and we started learning and we started pushing our boundaries with the knowledge that we have.
Right.
And then we realized that we have one of the oldest rainforests in the world. Geopolitically, that also includes Borneo, right? And so that means there is a wealth of knowledge. There is a wealth of access to things that we can eat without having to import everything.
Right.
And as a cook, this was what intrigued us the most. And so then we started bringing all of these weird seeds and weird nuts and weird fruits and different types of leaves. And then we spoke to different indigenous communities, and they would tell us, oh, this is how we use this is how we use that. Oh, we've never used that before. No, we don't eat bugs. So there were like all these conversations that were going on, and it was fascinating to us, and we had to find a way to bring all of this and put that onto a menu that we can share with the rest of the world. And that's how the sort of creative cooking kind of like took
Is there a tug of war between trying to be a purist of food and also experimenting with food? Is there such a thing that when it comes to you creating the dishes that you make?
Oh, I'm not a purist.
Okay.
I'm no purist by any account. At least with the cooking, right? I think that we will never try and put a nasi lemak on the menu. We will never change it. Nasi lemak is a nasi lemak. Cook it right, cook it well. If we can make the best nasi lemak and it's mind-blowingly good, then I'll put it on the menu. But I will find it very hard to do that.
Right.
Because nasi lemak is very conceptual to all of us.
Interesting.
All of us have a very different idea of what a nasi lemak is. If you grew up eating, say, nasi lemak cooked by Chinese, right? It's different from if you grew up eating nasi lemak cooked by makciks in the packet.
Yeah.
And even then with the nasi lemak cooked in the kuahs, with the kuahs, right? So it's like everybody's got very different sort of perception of what that nasi lemak is. So I'm not a Puritan. I also have a very loose idea of the word authenticity.
Okay.
And I think that what we do with the restaurant is at the restaurant is to just make sure that everything that comes out conceptually has to be interesting, and at the end it has to just taste good.
That makes so much sense when ultimately it just needs to taste good.
Yeah. I mean, I won't say that that's always been a priority for us. Before at a different level of learning, I felt conceptual was more important than it being tasty. I soon learned, or actually, very fast I learned my mistake, and simply look, it's got to taste good, buddy. If it's not good, then we can't put it on.
An idea is great. It also needs to be a good tasting idea.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to food, right? Because you see, the thing, this misnomer is that food is art. I don't think food's art, because art has the room for it to be subjective. Art can be different to everyone, right? Whereas food cannot. Food's a craft. Food is very objective. You know, it must taste good or it doesn't taste good, right? Okay, yeah, you can say maybe.
Some people might still have,
Yeah, maybe you say, okay, too salty for me, or not enough salt, or,
or
maybe too spicy, but that's just preference. It's different, right? But there's no room for interpretation for food.
Okay.
It's either it's good or it's not good.
Right.
It's either you cook the fish well or you don't cook it well.
Right.
It's either you cook the rice or it's not cooked, or it's overcooked.
Right.
So there is this sort of like objectivity to it.
Okay. When it comes to creating that new menu or that new item on your menu, what is that process like for you? Does it start with a new ingredient that you want to try out? What's that process?
Yeah, it always starts with an ingredient.
Okay.
Often people think that when people put dishes together, it's an epiphany moment. Epiphany moments they do happen, but I think it also boils down to many other factors that kind of like contribute to this stream of thought.
Okay.
And it means that it could be something that started off 4 or 5 years ago. It could be a memory from before that. And then as you work with ingredients often enough, and if you think about it often enough, you then sort of like harness all of these streams of linear thought, and then you just kind of like pull it together into this big ball. And then from there's like a ball of yarn almost. And then from all of these, like these individual strains of memory and thought and knowledge, then sort of like gets jumbled up. And then from that, and in the epicenter of it, then you find the beginning of a dish. And then that dish, you then have to cook it, right? Because it's conceptual first, right? And then you think about it and say, oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Let's try and cook it. And then you realize that, look, maybe the technical ability doesn't match. And then you'd have to fix that. So the process of actually, I mean, for us at the restaurant, putting together a dish is not as intuitive. It's not fully intuitive. It's intuitive, but it has to come with a degree of technical process.
Okay. You need to have the skill to be able to execute what's in your head.
You must.
Right?
I mean, it's like it's like with every other job, right? I mean, if you're a writer, you must have first your grammar, you must have the vocabulary, and then you must have an interesting point of thought. There must be an interesting opinion, and then you must be able then to express that. So it's similar. Cooking with, I mean, at least with our dishes, it's similar.
Now, when it comes to the stresses of managing a restaurant, I think it would go without saying that anyone who is running a business deals with stresses on a daily basis that can be difficult. How do you manage this in a way that you can keep going on?
I think the first thing is I I'm very clear to myself about the fact that this restaurant and what it has become is not my identity. It's not. It's linked, but it doesn't define it. Right.
You're more than this.
I'm me. Right. I'm a father. I'm a husband, son. I'm a friend. There are many other parts of me that are not defined by this restaurant. I think recognizing that although it's a very important part of me, it's a very interesting part of me. It's a very I've had a great ride. It doesn't define who I am, and I think like that helps quite a bit, because then you also know that, okay, look, I should be able to segregate my, well, not segregate, but also to be able to fragment my emotional ties to it. 'Cause that's what stress is, isn't it?
I guess the word is, some would describe it as compartmentalize.
That's a good way to put it. I've never heard it before, but yeah, that makes sense. But compartmentalizing to the point where you also recognize that there are times when it's going to overflow. There are times
spill over into
there are times when it's going to be dichotomies, right? And there are times where it's going to be the push and the pull, right? And I think recognizing that, and then like everything else, exercising it.
Right.
Because if there's a discipline to the approach and how you decipher hurdles, right? And if you exercise it, you get better at it.
Do you learn how to do this through trial and error, or was it something you inherently were able to do? Like you didn't even have to work at this; you just realized you could do this.
I'm not sure if everybody is got that natural talent. I don't. I've worked in high stress environments.
Right.
When I was younger, I was in a Christian scouting program called the Royal Rangers, and that kind of like helped define how you'd approach,
like give discipline.
Not just the discipline, but like the thought process in unraveling hurdles.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like
how to work through a problem.
How to work through things, yeah. And I think, and then that plus all the other life experiences.
It's good that you say this, because it gives hope to people that if you're not inherently this way, you can actually learn these skills.
No, it's true. And it's true because, okay, look, like people say things, sometimes I feel, just out of, people say things like, oh, you're very talented at cooking. I'm not talented at cooking. I've just applied myself.
Okay.
I've learned the skill. I've practiced the skill.
Right.
I've increased my knowledge. And with that, I've applied myself perseverantly and continuously. And this is something that, I guess things like, I think this is a lesson that I've seen, that I mimic through what I've seen, like with my father and both my father and my mother.
Right. So you had role models.
Yeah, because they're very applied. They're very applied people. You don't know how to do it, figure it out.
Practical,
Yeah, if we can't fix this, how do you fix that? Like, so how do you fix it? There must be a logical process to everything.
Right.
And if you can figure that logical process out, then you've already removed half the stress, because the stress comes from the unknown, right? Yeah,
it gives hope to regular people like me that
no, we're all regular, dude. Like, we're all regular.
I like to believe that. It sure does not feel that way sometimes, though. When it comes to food, there in the world that we live in now, it seems like there is a growing, for the longest time, there's been a growing voice in social media of food critics. They've always existed, but it feels like there's more and more of them now, right? What do you think of people who think of themselves as food critics going around judging food? Is that because there's two sides of the argument which we hear most often? One is they create a voice for people, right? Like they create like interest to go and check out a place. But on the flip side is, who are these people to even be able to judge food? What do you think?
Okay, so I think where I am now, I've not thought about it for a long time. All, most in part because I've refused to give someone who has very little or no interest in exploring or getting to know why a particular business does what it does, power.
Okay.
So I think that when you give it power, when you give it
Space.
influence over you, right? And how it makes you feel. And I will say that I have had many disagreements with how people view not just my restaurant but other restaurants as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I felt it comes from very myopic and very shallow places. But then I also realize that's also not my call. You know, if that person has an opinion and that's the opinion, then yeah, okay. Then that person is entitled to their opinion. And if that person also then wants to put that on, a platform that has like a wide viewership, I would think that the business will then have to endeavor to make that opinion irrelevant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, when we first started out, we were not the easiest to understand. We're still not very easy to understand. And there are people who do feel that, what we do is questionable. And there are always going to be people like that, right? But on the other end, there have been people who have supported us from the beginning up to now. Even when we didn't know what we were doing, they felt like,
They believe in you.
yeah, hey guys, I think you're onto something. It could be really interesting to see how this pans out over the next 7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
And we've had plenty of those. In the early years of the restaurant, it was very difficult for me to focus on that. Because I was, you read the Google reviews and you see the 2-star ones and the 1-star ones, and man, this is the first thing that you see. But then there were all of these 5-star ones, there were all of the 4-star ones. Everybody's got something good to say, but then there's also, if you were to read through the ones that were lower ranked, you'd also then be able to take a step back and see like, hey, maybe there is a gap in our business, there is a gap in our service, there might be something that we can do to make this better. This is how the general population feels. We should be able to do something about it, right? And then you align yourself, and then you align yourself, and you realign until you finally feel like, hey, you know what? You're not getting as many 2-stars as you used to be. You're not getting as many 1-stars as you used to be. I'm talking about Google review, not Michelin.
Yeah.
And then you come to work and you see, like, look, we've got a full dining room. And we've had a constantly a full-ish dining room for a long time. So that means we must be doing something correct.
Yeah.
And we must be doing something well.
Is that the ultimate measure of it? How do you measure how do you yourself measure your success?
I first got to be able to pay my staff, pay myself, pay my vendors. It's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business.
Yeah.
All of these accolades are great, but also recognizing that they're also what they are is they're business tools, right?
That really puts it plainly, actually. That really answers the question, actually.
It is. I mean, it simply is. I think all of us in the industry recognize it as such. It's great to get recognized, of course.
Yeah.
Emotionally, it's a great reflection of the work that you put in. I'm not taking that away, right? But it is still and ultimately still a business.
Yeah.
And as far as people who feel they have an opinion to express over a meal that they've spent on, this is how they want to express themselves, right? And who am I to say whether or not you're right or you're wrong? You know,
Because everyone's entitled to an opinion.
you're entitled to
Right? And you can have an opinion of an opinion.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because when someone judges you, then you can judge them right back as well.
I could.
The funniest thing sometimes, based on on the people we've spoken to, is that people who judge, the harshest critics, seem unable to receive criticism themselves.
That's
they
true.
defend themselves from criticism, which is ironic because they are the harshest critic.
It's
You know?
true. But I also find that, what really, really works for us is that you can have an opinion about what we do, but I don't have to react to it. And I don't have to have I don't have to put validity to what you've just said.
That perfectly brings us to pretty much the last question before we run to our rapid fire questions, which is it would be an ideal life for all of us if we didn't have to live with any regrets. And while we can appreciate the regrets that we have, whether big or small, right? If you could advise your younger self, right, go back to him and prepare him better, knowing what's coming up and where you are now, what would you tell him?
Everything that has happened since the day you were born up to now has had a purpose or a serendipity or an alignment, right? Everything has had to come to this point where you are right now, right? And this point where you are right now is not your destination. There is still a greater amount of things to look forward to.
Right.
And how you alter, because the more experience you have, the better you are at navigating the decisions that you want to make. And right, if you could see yourself in the next 15 years or so, what are the decisions you will make now? So if we take that as the statement of, or at least the question of how you want to sort of like design your life, then nothing really appears as a regret. Because because there's a sense of the sense of space and time is where you are now, where you are in the future, and how you got to where you are now.
It's just to be okay with where you are now.
Yeah.
And being okay with where you are now also includes not wanting to go back.
Recognizing, actually, more so, actually, to be a bit more accurate, I guess, is recognizing that everything that has happened from then up to now is preparing you for now up to the future.
Okay, we are going into the rapid fire questions now, right?
Yeah.
So just answer as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Got 6 questions for this. Can you share a memorable piece of feedback from a guest that resonated with you still until now?
A friend of the wife of a late friend of mine came to the restaurant. They're from Germany, en route to Bali. They came to the restaurant early days, and she wrote on a piece of paper, 1-star Michelin. This was way before anything.
Wow.
And she, it's just a post-it note that we had at the restaurant. She wrote 1-star Michelin, and she gave it to us.
Right.
And I've kept that for a long time. And that was momentary for me. That was monumental for me.
Yeah. If you weren't a chef, what would you be doing now?
So interestingly enough, when we went for an education fair when I was young, the 3 picks that I had for a career, well, the first was actually fashion design.
Oh.
Thank God that didn't pan out. As you can tell from my fashion.
No judgment. It looks great, I think.
You can put batik on anything and it will work. The second was fine arts, and then the third was being a chef.
All right.
So I think something that would have been something to do with actually actively creating something with my hands. So if I had to answer that question right now, I'd probably say carpenter.
Share with us a guilty pleasure food you secretly love.
Ooh, Family Mart chocolate ice cream.
Wow, that's very specific.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the kids love it as well. So
You and my niece both.
yeah, yeah. Hey, but they make a nice ice cream. Like
Yeah,
it's a
true,
nice
true.
smoothie.
You have to cook blindfolded. What's a food trend that needs to go away forever?
Oh, that's a hard one because I'm not really sure what food trends exist now.
Oh.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. And people you're gonna get so much of hate for this one. I think hot pot and steamboat
They need to go away forever,
forever.
but come back every Chinese New Year, right?
I don't know. I don't care.
Oh,
I really don't know. I don't care.
I thought we could be friends up to this point.
Yeah. Well, I was about to say Yi Sang, but
Yeah, you're drawing a line in the sand
But,
now,
yeah.
Darren. And everyone behind the camera seems
I
to be
know, right?
agreeing with you.
I know because look,
You're supposed to be on my side, people.
hey, you're paying money for you to cook. You know.
Yeah. Okay, you're right.
Okay?
You're
That's just for you. Just imagine for me.
yeah, you're a
I'm paying
person.
money for me to cook.
Yes, yes.
People pay
They
me
should
to
pay
cook.
you. They should pay you. You're right. Okay.
So yeah.
This is a much longer argument that needs to be had. Okay.
You know what? When my wife hears this, I'm in trouble as well.
Alright. We will send her a personalized copy
Yeah.
with just this clip. Okay. Rate these from easiest to toughest food critic. Right? Easiest to toughest. Family, your team, your guests, or yourself.
Easiest I think would be me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then followed by.
Then I think would be the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think guess
And then your family's at the top.
if we're just talking about my two sons,
Okay.
then yeah.
We should just be talking about your two sons because I love the fact that they're at the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty tough. So I have to work a lot harder for that.
What's your favorite thing that you cook?
Everything is a favorite for the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you know how to please them.
Yeah, so just as long as you know what buttons to press,
Right.
and then you'll be okay.
You're a good father. You're a good
I
father.
try my best.
Finally, we ask this of all of our guests. Imagine this. If you had the opportunity to make one change as Prime Minister of Malaysia for a day, you're going to be only for a day, what would it be and why?
I would revisit our agricultural policies. I would pay some attention to food security. In that we try to reduce or at least look at reducing some of our imports and dependency on imports. I would look at including indigenous communities into that conversation because they've got a lot of knowledge into what is
Sustainable?
not sustainable, but like what's available in our forests and what we could use, right? So I think like there's a lot of knowledge there, there's a lot of deep knowledge there, and
That we're not tapping into?
that we should be having more access to.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a interesting answer. Definitely something I will vote for you. And thank you for sharing everything that you have today. We appreciate that. And thank you, Darren, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.